obligatory forward-looking statement. And the thing I'm going to be talking to you about for the next 20 minutes is around gaming analytics with a shared Snowplow and Databricks customer, Supercell. So yeah, looking forward to digging in. So my name is Alex Dean. I'm one of the two co-founders of Snowplow. My other co-founder is in the audience, also CEO. And from, oh, it's quite loud. From the attire, you might be thinking, never played a computer game in his life. I'm a recovering gamer, and yeah, I help my kids with their platformers when they get stuck. The point I really want to land with you all today is that knowing your player, understanding your player, is foundational in the emerging kind of games ecosystem. It's foundational to sustainable growth. It's foundational to monetization in the games industry. And that games industry that we're all in is changing, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. So, case study that we'll talk about today is around Supercell and how we've been powering cross-platform analytics for Supercell. So we've been working with our friends in the Nordics since early 2023. And yeah, it's been an incredibly rewarding partnership, and looking forward to sharing a little bit more about that in a moment. So quick show of hands. Who in the audience has heard of or interacted with Snowplow before? Okay, cool. Some hands going up. So I will, for you guys, you will know this. For the rest of you, I want to spend a couple of moments explaining what Snowplow is. So Snowplow is customer data infrastructure for Databricks. And when we talk about customers in this industry, we're going to be talking about players. So think of it as player data infrastructure. And it's a pipeline, and it has multiple steps. It's a single directional pipeline. And it starts with data collection. So we have a bunch of different SDKs. We've been building SDKs for the digital estate since 2012. And that includes all the different digital platforms that you might build a video game in. We then do data processing, so we validate the data, we enrich it to make it more interesting for analytics, and we have governance as well that plays nicely with Unity Catalog. And then we stream the data into the Lakehouse, into Databricks. And if you're familiar with the medallion architecture, you can think of Snowplow as really working that data, generating the bronze data from the game, processing it into silver, and then processing it into gold tables that are ready for game analytics. What you can do with Snowplow is a variety of different use cases. A lot of people come to Snowplow to solve analytics, measurement, attribution use cases, but there's some really exciting new operational use cases that Snowplow is being leveraged for, and a lot of our roadmap at the moment is around connecting the Snowplow data in for agentic experiences, so very dynamic, operational. Agentic experiences, the kinds of things that you guys saw at the keynote this morning around like building your own agents with agent bricks. And so here's a lovely testimonial from the community tech lead at Supercell. So Snowplow on Databricks has been crucial for Supercell. It gives us deep insights into how players engage with our games and our events. It's empowered our teams to build better experiences, especially for this game Brawl Stars, while driving more collaboration and getting us closer to the community. It's been a game changer for understanding player feedback and elevating our product decisions. So yeah, it's a lovely testimonial. I wanted to take a moment and talk about the significant evolution we've seen in the gamer experience, in the video games industry, going back quite a long way. And I won't spend too much time on this slide. Happy to chat in detail about this afterwards if anyone's interested. But the point I really wanted to make is that the games industry has really evolved from console games into more mobile, into casual, into much more complex, dynamic, like service-based environments. A lot of game studios in the last few years have gone really heavily into live services and cross-platform, so kind of moving away from that kind of single purchase experience for games into live service, into seasonal games, into cross-platform. And there's been a huge amount of change in that industry. In many ways, games companies have had to become a lot more like software as a service companies in terms of this concept of long-running games. Where's the industry going next? We don't know. None of us know. But there are some really interesting trends we think around what we're calling ambient gaming, so this idea of potentially much more agentic experiences in the games. So almost moving from a world where the games are sort of pre-assembled, built by coders in a studio and then shipped, or live updated every every month into a much more dynamic mode where potentially agents are going to be starting to build those games. So it's going to get very interesting. Not sure what this next chapter will be called, but excited to see what happens. The way the industry is changing, the player journey is just getting far, far more complex. And this is a kind of an indicative, weavy-windy journey from, modeled off some different studio games we've seen and we've helped do analytics for. And the key point here is really that just like the journey is much more multi-threaded, it's much longer running, it's more cross-device. There are gamers when they're still anonymous. There are gamers when they're in your store. There are gamers when they've signed up on different devices. And so the point really is that this is a very complex environment to work with, and Snowplow really helps to manage this complexity. And this is the point kind of on the earlier slide that I wanted to make is like this shift in studio strategy. So this shift from the one-time purchases to continuous engagement to this idea that we need to be constantly observing the gameplay, constantly observing how our players are operating and using that to dynamically influence the game. In the old world, we worked with a studio a few years ago that put Snowplow in during the build phase. So, they were building a AAA title, they put Snowplow in, and they were like, we've got Snowplow in whilst we're building the game, whilst we're in sort of build mode. And they were like, well, we're not going to need it in when it goes into production. That world doesn't exist anymore. In the world now, you need to be constantly iterating the game post-production, post-launch. What we see when we talk to game studios, kind of pre-Snowplow, if you will, is we see a lot of different data silos. So we see a real fragmentation. We see a lot of different package tools that they've adopted. Different departments inside the studio have adopted different tools over the years. And it leads to the player data being very fragmented. So, we see player data fragmented across digital analytics tools like Google Analytics, product analytics tools like Firebase. A lot of studios will use things like CDPs, like Optimove, to drive engagement and run campaigns. And we see a lot of homebrew. So we see a lot of studios that, the studios are full of developers. They thought, well, how hard can it be to build a real-time, event collection pipeline? And so we see a lot of homebrew pipelines that people are growing tired of. All of this together creates a lot of issues. So it creates issues around data quality. It creates issues around latency, cost, a lot of data governance problems as well, because it's very hard to tie all this up. It's very hard to govern this data centrally. So it becomes a real sort of hairball that we come in and we often unpick. And that hairball prevents games from accelerating growth. So, as a game studio in 2025, you've got to know your player. You've got to be thinking about player metrics. You've got to be, trying to reduce churn. You've got to be looking at the end-to-end journey. You've got to be resolving identity for when the player hasn't yet signed up or subscribed to your title. And then you've got to grow your player base. So, you need to be understanding what are the different behaviors you're seeing, what are the cohorts and clusters of different players that you're seeing in that game. And you've got to be engaging with the community. So, you've got to be engaging with the people who aren't yet in your title, who, maybe are playing the previous release of your game and working to bring them in. Player monetization is not a topic we always want to talk about all the time, but it's important, especially in the kind of live service world. And we've got interesting challenges. We've got fraud detection. We've got promotions we want to run, personalization. We've got a purchase funnel that we need to optimize and make sure people aren't dropping off. So all of these are tier one challenges for studios today. And that kind of hairball of package tools that we saw on the previous slide, they're not helping to solve these problems, to look at the player journey in a holistic way. So this is kind of a technical architecture on a deeper level than the earlier one. I won't go through this in its entirety. I think we talked already a little bit about SDKs. But the point I really wanted to land here is around the Snowplow architecture and philosophy. So an awful lot of tools in kind of analytics or personalization, whatever, they're kind of a walled garden. They have their own storage. They're kind of like a SaaS-style tool. That is not Snowplow. Snowplow is a real-time streaming pipeline to put all your game data through, or your game event data through, and it runs natively inside your own AWS or Azure or Google Cloud account. We can host it too, but it runs, for most of our customers, natively. It's bring your own cloud model, and it's bring your own lakehouse. So the data goes straight into your own Databricks environment. That's where you build, we help you build the gold level tables. And that's really, really, really important because it means you've got all the Snowplow, player behavior data flowing through straight into your lakehouse. And there you can join it with all the other data that you're managing. So, for example, if you've got a matchmaking server system that's throwing off its own telemetry, you're putting that in, you can build that join. You can build a player 360 in your own lakehouse off of the Snowplow data. And this concept, we could call it bring your own lakehouse. We could call it Lakehouse Native. It allows studios to take much more ownership of their player data, of their player journey. It's much more future-proof. You're not locked into a specific package vendor. And I call out a few different points here. So a lot of our customers in gaming and real money gaming, they care a lot about identity stitch. They have their own views on how they want to identify who these players are. So that's much more powerful than Lakehouse Native. Real-time streaming is really important. So you're going to have some really low latency use cases that you're going to want to run inside the Lakehouse, and the Snowplow pipeline is streaming, so we get the data into Databricks super fast. And it's also very well governed as well. So you have full transparency, full control over the data processing. It's not a black box. You can understand how it's processing the event data. And all of that is quite different from the packaged solutions world. So I wanted to talk just for a moment about Supercell, and I think we'll have time for questions after this, so very happy to make this interactive, and I think Eric's got a mic at the back. But yeah, let's talk briefly about Supercell. So we started working with them a couple of years ago. They had a very specific game that they wanted us to help with. They also wanted us to help with the online store. And we helped them in a few different dimensions. So we brought in that very rich, reliable, high-quality data straight into their lakehouse. We did it at high volume. We did it at low latency. We passed all the different volume spikes that they had. And that enabled them to start doing cross-platform user journey analytics. And there's a really important point here, which is Supercell didn't just want to understand player behavior in a specific game. They wanted to understand what was happening upstream of a gamer discovering that title, signing up for that title. So they wanted to understand how the gamer was interacting with their website, with their online store, and similar. And that's enabled Supercell to run much more dynamic, spontaneous in-game events and create a lot more community engagement because they fundamentally just have a much clearer view of who these gamers are and how they're behaving prior to signing up to a title. And Boris, lovely quote from Boris. So our previous digital analytics tool was very limited for us. We couldn't fetch the data easily. We couldn't send custom identifiers, and there were GDPR concerns, so there were kind of data governance, compliance concerns. Most importantly, we couldn't integrate it with our other data sources to get a full picture of player behavior from marketing websites to in-game actions. And so it's a lovely case study from Supercell. We're, of course, working with other studios in Europe and US. And I think key point here that I wanted to leave you guys with is if you're going all in on Databricks on the Lakehouse as your kind of central data repository for building the games, marketing the games, promoting the games, and live serving the games, then you've got to be bringing the player behavior, the in-game behavior into that environment. You've got to be bringing the marketing touches as well when the gamers are interacting with your websites, your microsites, et cetera. You've got to be bringing all that into the Lakehouse. And yeah, Snowplow is a great way of getting that done. Okay, yeah, so we've got time for questions. And before we get to questions, just want to say, do come and see us at our booth. So our booth is by the helicopter, the Joby helicopter downstairs. So we'd love to see you there. And I love talking about this topic. That's my LinkedIn. And yeah, very happy to talk about that further. Do connect to me and we can chat further. But yeah, I would love to answer any questions that you guys have.